Good afternoon, team. We're going to keep it quick today, but address perhaps one of the most important concepts that you can apply to your personal life, which is your morning routine. Now, the reason why every single blinking influencer, social media figure, Jocko Willink, everyone under the sun will talk about this is because it's so important. And once you actually understand this concept and apply it, but also understand the mindset behind it, I feel like that's where it really begins to bear fruit within your life. It's not just about waking up in time to get everything done before work, but it's understanding that it's kind of like an inverted iceberg, that the small, invisible 20% that you do before everyone else wakes up, before the responsibilities kick in, are what actually feeds and nourishes everything else, which is, your public life, your family, your work, ministry, everything. So what are we looking at here? I like this biblical concept of foundation of stone. You want to build on the stone, not the stand. And it is upon this rock that you can build your life. It is upon the rock and stability and routine of the morning that then carries through into your day. Now we see this directly in Christ's life, where it says in Mark chapter 1:35, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. And he says this to the apostles as well, like sometimes when he sent them out to ministry and they're kind of getting back together, he says, you guys need to go out into the wilderness and spend time alone. He takes them away from the city, from the noise, from the distraction. So this is a biblical concept, and I know there were some Psalms that I was looking at, chapters in Isaiah and stuff. This is a common motif. But even without the Bible, we can understand the importance of this from a natural perspective. But I'm going to combine both today. So, before we jump into the morning routine, two important points. I'll start with this one. The whole mindset that fuels the morning routine is conviction and intention. I'm not going to be able to have a disciplined morning if I don't have conviction about the importance of it. I love this principle from Jocko Willink where he says that I want to be waking up before the enemy. That somewhere out there, obviously in his case, he was talking about like the Taliban or Islamic resistance. In our case, as young men, it could be even just as simple as a competitor at work. From my point as a Catholic, it could be, wanting to rebuild the church and save society, save the West. We've got this humongous invasion of Islam into Western culture. There's going to be other people who hate you and hate your family and want to destroy what you believe in, who are waking up earlier, training, and bettering themselves in order to advance their cause. So why are you not doing the same? You need to be waking up before the enemy. And you've got to have, again, that conviction that what you're going to be doing in the morning when you wake up at 5 a.m. and you're underslept and you're tired and unmotivated, you've got to have that internal conviction that carries you through. That what I'm about to do to better myself for the sake of all of these things that I believe in, is important enough to sacrifice my comfort. So that is essential. If you don't have this conviction, find it, think about it, and write it down. Put it on a whiteboard, put it on your alarm, put it somewhere that you can see it, because that's what's going to drive you through when your motivation isn't there. And intention. I'm not just going to wake up and say, hopefully I have time to work out. How much time exactly do I need? What am I going to be training? Am I going for a run? Am I hitting the weights? Am I doing a mobility workout? Have all of this set out and intentional the night before. I don't care what you use, a diary, your notes, your calendar, Google Sheets, somewhere where it's written down and that you can execute on the intention that you've placed before. Okay, beautiful. With that in place, now the reason I didn't skip over that is because a lot of people know what I'm about to talk about now. They know that they need to pray every morning. They know that they should be doing physical exercise. But the reason there's an inability or no capacity to execute on that consistently is because there's a lack of conviction and intention behind that. 3 pillars of life, and particularly for our morning routine now. Prayer, daily bread, the well of living water. I'm going to talk about this now in the context of generation, but we know that if we're not giving those first fruits to God, if we're not grounding ourselves in God and the grace that we receive from Jesus Christ, all of our other efforts, regardless of how noble they are ultimately going to be built on sand. So it is essential that the very first thing we do, I know you can sort of adjust this based on your routine, but the very first thing you do is to get on your knees and acknowledge God and give thanks and spend time with Christ in mental prayer and spend time in scripture, spend time reading spiritual books that are going to help you grow spiritually, because this is what's really going to nourish and grow you and grow the virtue that is then going to feed in everything else. The reason it's so important to do prayer at the start of the day is because you actually have the silence to do it. Once you've gone to the gym, once you've started work, you're moving around, the blood's pumping, you're thinking about the next project. It's very hard to kind of rein that back in and go into a time of silence and contemplation and meditation. And that's why it's so key to consecrate that very first moment of the day. And this isn't just me saying that, this is what every single saint has said about the importance of cultivating prayer in the morning. We see this in the monastic traditions of their hours of prayer. This is basic stuff. The reality is that for most people, if you don't do it here, it's very unlikely that you're going to do it later on in the day. And that doesn't mean that you can't pray later on in the day, but have intentional quality time where the bulk of that prayer, the bulk of that silent time is in the morning when there's no other disturbances. And first fruits to God. I love talking about the story of Cain and Abel. I mean, there's many lessons in there, but one of the lessons that I've drawn from it is that the reason that Cain's sacrifice was rejected is because he gave God the leftover fruits of his harvest. While when you read about Abel's sacrifice, he gave them, I forgot what it's called, the word used specifically, but like the youngest, most pure lamb and the fattiest portion. So he actually gave what was best to God, and then he kept the leftover. He kept what was left for himself. It's like wanting to get the piece of cake with the most icing on it. Well, Abel gave that most important, best tasting thing of his day, of the lamb, to God, while Cain basically left it till last minute and he mumbled a few prayers before bed. Well, that's not the right disposition. So beginning the day with prayer cultivates a disposition that carries through into the rest of the day. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll see the quotes that I post a lot. They talk about that, a man who begins the day with prayer carries within him the fire that sustains him through the rest of the day, things like that. This is vital. And once you start practicing that habit as well, you'll actually find that it becomes a lot more natural and easier to pray in the morning, and you're not feeling so groggy. And that's the importance of cultivating this routine consistently, because all of this operates like compound interest. The more that you do it and the more you put in, the more return on investment you get. If you're super inconsistent and you're missing the weekends and you're not praying on certain days where you're busy, it's very hard to build up the momentum that you need to actually get these practices to bear fruit in your life. Secondly, physical. Grease the groove. Use it or lose it. Strength, fitness, and mobility. Obviously, myself as a young man, my whole philosophy is that based on who I am, based on my masculinity, based on my age, is that I have an inherent responsibility that I need to be strong enough not just to carry my own weight, but carry the weight of others, whether that be my wife, my children, my grandparents, my parents. You have to be able to bear the load. And the morning time is where you have the ability to do that. Just like prayer, once I get into my work commitments, my family commitments, any other things that I'm doing outside of work, like for example, today's Saturday, but after work, I'll have to go to Mass, to Vigil Mass. And for the past couple of weeks or months, I've been running an altar serving program, which would require me to arrive an hour earlier. So if I was to leave my workout till the evening, I'd end up going to the gym at 8:30 or 9 and ruining my sleep quality, and also eliminating any other extra time, which I don't have a lot of, to spend with my wife. So for me specifically, and what I'm arguing now for you, is that you should try and keep your physical disciplines in the morning. It's kind of that thing about the interior life where you're just developing yourself, you're working on those habits, you're taking that selfish time so that then the rest of the day can be completely about others and about selfless things. So I'm going to recommend you do some strength training. You can do some fitness, go for a run. It's very important. And otherwise mobility. What you can do is you can alternate this. So maybe you're not just going to wake up at 5 and smash a huge heavy weights workout, but maybe you are doing that 3 days a week, and then on the other days, you're either doing like a mobility routine or you're going on a run. My current program, I do like 5 days, 4 or 5 days of strength training, and basically every day I'll do it in the morning unless I'm really busy with work early on, in which case I'll leave it to my lunch break, but 5 days of strength training. Saturday I'll go for a run, and then I'll also do like a physio kind of Pilates session in between to work on my back. So that's physical. Grease the groove, use it or lose it. I've got an asterisk about manual labor because you'll have guys, oh, it's not so important for me to train. I'm a dairy farmer, so my work is very physical. But I know that I could always be stronger. I know that I could always be fitter, because the reality is, sure, I'm moving around all day, but am I actually training different muscle groups to lift load? Not really. Am I actually developing my cardiovascular ability? I'd argue definitely not. Like, now that I've resumed running, I realize how much I've been able to improve on that and how it actually carries over into a lot of other things. And mobility. How many people actually spend time stretching and making sure that, you know, their posture is good and all of that? That's super important, and something that I'm working on now, especially with the physio. Physical time. Take this and do it. Wake up before the enemy. We're improving those essential attributes of ourselves. Finally, mental. This is probably the one that I don't do as much because I'm still studying as well. So I'll usually spend time reading and writing during the day, but I still take this time to read things like about finance, for example, is something that I want to educate myself more on. Educational reading. Mindset. Maybe you're intentionally listening to like a Huberman podcast where you're, you know, deriving more concepts. Meditation. I think obviously prayer comes first, but I think some of the things that we can learn from secular meditative practices are very good and very helpful. Especially if you are having a very busy day. What are you actually doing? Like, this is classic. For someone who's not studying, for like a young dude who's just working, let's say you've got prayer underway, what are you actually doing to improve yourself, to increase your leverage, to actually make yourself more capable, to increase your skills? That's where this mental block is so important. Now, you can technically do this in the evening. I'm definitely not against that. The evening's a great time to read before bed. But if you find that you're not getting it into the routine, that's where it's got to be part of this morning routine. Educational reading. Learn about investing. Learn about saving. Learn about accounting. Learn how to edit videos. I don't care what it is, but learn how to do something so that you can then increase your capacity. Okay, cool. I got fired from my job. My company, you know, downsized and I lost my job. Whatever happens, it's okay, cool. I've been working for the past 2 years at learning marketing. I've been working for the past few years on building my social media, my personal brand, and now I've got some brand deals, and now this work opportunity came out of that. If you're actually utilizing your spare time to increase your leverage, which I recommend you do in the morning, you're giving yourself a lot more opportunity in the future. So those are the 3 things that I recommend doing every single morning. Now, why did I write 20% and invisible? It's kind of what I talked about with the iceberg analogy at the start, is that it's probably not the best analogy, but without the foundation of this morning routine, everything else kind of collapses. And the inverse is true. When you do have this beautiful, solid foundation of self-discipline and virtue, and I guess taking care in a proper way, not in a self or a vain way, but in an outward-oriented way, all of this stuff improves in quality dramatically, drastically. I'm more capable to protect and provide for my wife and family. I'm more skillful and I'm more patient, so I'm able to go into leadership positions at work because I've also been studying leadership. I've been studying things about theology, or I've been learning about history. I'm able to take on some ministry projects on the side. I've now learned how to altar serve. I can pass on that skill. I've invested in a course that teaches me about social media and marketing. Cool, I can start building my personal brand, my coaching business. Cool, I've got a bit of spare time in the evening. I can go to adoration. All of this stuff improves in quality and becomes more possible by me taking the time. And sure, it's going to be a sacrifice in the sense that sometimes you're missing out on sleep. But I always say to people, the return on investment on these activities is through the roof in terms of time spent to what it equals in, to what it results in. Law of Generation comes from a book called The Soul of the Apostolate, which talks about sort of evangelism and ministry and those kinds of things. And it says, you cannot give of yourself, or you cannot give something that you do not have. If I'm losing myself in the hustle and bustle and the activity, and I'm trying to do all of these things, let's say I'm working in ministry or I'm teaching or trying to spend time with my family, but I'm just so overwhelmed, so stressed, I'm unfit, I haven't spent time meditating and working on my mindset. If I'm spending 100% of my time here, I'm actually completely compromising my ability to do this stuff well. But by actually cutting back, or by actually giving myself time in the morning, I'm actually able to give of myself properly to those things. So that's the link. It's the 20% that feeds into the 80. That's the Pareto principle as well. I'm not sure which way it goes, but again, the invisible interior life, the morning routine. You don't have to brag about this stuff. You don't have to post it on social media every day. You don't have to make an idol out of it, but you need to do it. There's just no way around it. You can say, oh, I can work out later, I can do all of this crap later. Yeah, technically you can, but is it what's best? Is it what's optimal? I argue no. Do this in the morning, give the first fruits to God, work on yourself, and then take the rest of the day to give fully of yourself to everything else. So hopefully that's a good summary of the morning routine. I can tell you right now, when I started practicing this, when I first started practicing this, I was probably about 20 years old on the dairy farm. It kind of came more naturally because I was I was having to wake up early for work. But then going and studying at university and living in the city in Sydney, where technically I could have had a much more later, relaxed lifestyle, applying this, going to morning mass every morning, saying my prayers every morning, going to the gym in the morning to have extra time, it honestly made my life so much easier and so much better because, again, I could actually focus on everything else knowing that I'd taken care of the essentials. So that's my advice, that's my recommendation, that's my biblical morning routine, the foundation of stone. Upon this rock you shall build your life. Check out my other YouTube videos, follow me on Instagram, and let's keep building God's kingdom and honoring Him every single day. AMDG ad majorem Dei gloriam, for the greater glory of God. God bless you all.